Hello there. Now, in the episode you're about to hear, we talk to various guests about some of the major events that have shaped London in the last 25 years. And a bit later in the show, we speak about the 7/7 terror attacks. We'd like to dedicate this episode to the victims on that day and those affected by the events, including, of course, TfL and frontline staff members. Now, here's the episode, and thank you for listening. Yes, 13 years ago, where I'm standing right now felt like the centre of the entire world. Because I am standing just outside the London Stadium in the Queen Elizabeth Olympic Park. This was the focal point for the Olympics and Paralympics at London 2012. But of course, it was all about the sport that happened inside that stadium. And my producers just said to me, actually, why don't you just try and replicate what Mo Farah and Jess Ennis-Hill did and make history, Tim, by getting some great audio to emulate those great sporting heroes? I should run around the perimeter of the Olympic Stadium. So apparently, here goes, because today we're talking about TfL and massive big events right across London. And they don't get much bigger than this. Welcome to Mind the Gap. Okay, I did 100 metres-ish. Right, we've got a jam-packed schedule today, and with 4 fascinating people who were, as they say, in the room where it happened. Quick introduction from me, in case this is the first time you listen to Mind the Gap. My name is Tim Dunn. I'm a Londoner in love with my city, its transport and its history, and finding ways to tell its story. And London's story in the last 25 years really is inextricably entwined with the story of TfL. The London that we love is known for its huge planned events. Everything from the New Year's Eve fireworks to the royal celebrations of all kinds. But since TfL was formed in 2000, one golden planned event stands above all of them, really. We've just left the stadium area now, walking over the bridge back towards Westfield and Stratford station again. I'm just going to pause briefly before we walk out any further, because you can probably hear in the background sound of water. Well, these are the fountains that have been installed as part of the incredible Queen Elizabeth Olympic Park. This entire area in Stratford is unrecognisable now compared to how the Lee Valley looked before London won the Olympic bid so many years ago now. But the events we held weren't just happening here in the park area, of course. It was all over London, from Wimbledon to Greenwich, right the way across to Horse Guards Parade in the middle. And without TfL connecting all the sites together, none of that could have happened. And my first guest today is a man who knows all about how they wired all those sites together and planned it, prepared for it, and made it happen. A lovely chap named Mark Evers. He's now TfL's Chief Customer Officer, and he's been at the organisation since 2006. What I want to talk to him about today is the role he had leading up to 2012 as the amazingly titled Director of Games Transport.
I guess my role had a number of different strands to it. One was ensuring that we understood exactly what TfL was on the hook to deliver in order to host a successful Games. I then worked with colleagues from across Transport for London to ensure that we were on track to deliver those things. And then lastly, I spent a lot of time talking to business stakeholders, but also the media as well, trying to help them to better understand exactly what the Games was going to mean for London so that people could both make the most of this amazing time and sample both the Olympics and Paralympics, but equally get on with their lives, get on with their businesses as well, so that London could keep working.
It's fair to say, isn't it, I think that the Games were delivered by transport, and if we didn't have the transport network we did, we wouldn't have won the bid.
Yeah, well, certainly if there was one potential sort of Achilles heel to it, transport was often cited. There were concerns that would TfL's network be able to get spectators to events, get athletes to events via the road network and to enable the city to run properly. The Olympic and Paralympics are unlike pretty much any other project that you might do. There's no opportunity to turn around and say, do you know what, actually, we're going to open this a few months later than what we originally planned. Come opening ceremony day, the eyes of the world are watching and you need to be ready to go. And we were super conscious about the need to ensure that all of our infrastructure works were completed a year ahead of the game so that we had the opportunity to test them and run them and get used to their operation, so that when it did come to both the Olympics and the Paralympics, all of the world's media were talking about the fantastic achievements of the athletes and certainly weren't talking about whether or not TfL did its job.
Keeping it out of the headlines, perhaps. But can you give us some examples of some stuff that TfL had to plan for? You mentioned you planned a long time in advance, but also innovate on as well.
Yeah, well, I guess there were, in the background, just a huge amount of effort going into ensuring that we had additional capacity for games time. So there were the massive big infrastructure projects, which I guess transport organisations do all the time. But we had a heap of stuff on. We had upgrades to the Jubilee line. We had significant upgrades to the London Overground network. We had new trains and an extension on the Docklands Light Railway as well. We did a significant station upgrade at Stratford International. We did the same thing at King's Cross and Pancras as well. So there were lots of really complex, big projects that all needed to come together and get delivered on time. And that's no easy undertaking. But I think in many ways, one of the big innovations that we sort of put in place during the Games, and something which remains sort of very valuable today, is the ability to provide really personalised, up-to-date information to enable both individuals and businesses to plan journeys more effectively. And that was crucial in the run-up to Games for businesses who needed to plan and understand, especially when it came to the road network, which certainly in some parts of London was severely disrupted by the need to put in place the Olympic and the Paralympic route network, sort of our means of assuring that Games family members got to their events on time. And that required us to change traffic signal timings, to take out road capacity, to provide Games lanes, which were hugely controversial at the time. But all of that was manageable, so long as businesses understood exactly what the implications were going to be. So we sort of created a whole new website, created really strong networks into the stakeholder groups that represented different industry sectors within London as well. And that's been enormously useful ever since. And London continues to host massive events on a weekly basis, and having a trusted relationship with our customers, but also with businesses, so that we can help them to plan and we can plan as well, means that London keeps moving.
So we're still living today then with the innovations that you rolled out for those Games and Paralympics as a foundation for what we have now.
It is, yeah. So this travel demand management idea of making the most of your available capacity by almost like massaging your customer demand into either times of day or locations on the network where you have enough capacity is something which we continue to do. We put in place a number of new accessibility features to enable more customers, especially those perhaps with a mobility impairment, to make better use of the network. So having boarding ramps, which help to sort of bridge the space between the platform and trains that might be slightly higher or lower than that platform, continue to be used today and are highly effective. And I think another area which we continue to work on, but we're much better at than we were previously as a result of our focus on the Games, was the idea that we've got one integrated transport network. It isn't that you've got the tube and that's separate to buses and that's separate to the London Overground. That actually customers experience the network by, they leave their homes, they get on a public transport service and they're trying to get to somewhere, and they don't care which operator is using it or exactly which colour roundel is on the vehicle that they're using at the time. And I think as a result of that, we've got customer service principles which are applied consistently across our network now. We've got customer information, wayfinding provision, which is presented in a uniform and consistent way, so that customers experience a much more holistic customer experience when they're on the network. Within London, we decided to host the games where the venues were studded throughout the centre of the city, and that made for these iconic visions of London. Stratford itself is very, very close to central London compared to some of the Olympic parks that other cities had in the past. We had a riverside zone in Greenwich. We had Horse Guards Parade. We had events at Lord's Cricket Ground, at Wimbledon, at Wembley, and then we had all of these road events that were like taking place within the heart of London. And that the fact that we had these major events taking place alongside places of business, near to hospitals, tourist attractions that lots of people were going to anyway, created greater complexity. But alongside that, also the daily variability, the fact that on one day you've got a massive road race happening in central London, and then the next day you've got something else happening in a different part of London. You don't have people using the athletic stadium in the first week, but in the second week you've got 100,000 people trying to get into and out of the Olympic Park twice a day. All of this change needed to be thought through, and we got great models from the colleagues at the Olympic Delivery Authority, the ODA, and then we were able to plan for that and to understand where the likely pinch points were going to be on the network. People were thinking very hard about understanding the likely demands on the transport network from day one.
It is dangerous to reminisce, isn't it? Yet I remember it so very well. In fact, I'm reminiscing, turning it over in my head again and again. But I don't say this flippantly, though. But I do think that London 2012 changed how the world thought about London, and maybe how many of us thought about ourselves and our place in the world. You can probably hear now, we just walked into the chattering and the buzzing sound behind me. We've walked into Stratford Station, that still gleaming steel and glass sprawling station on the edge of the Olympic Park. This place was transformed massively ahead of 2012 to accommodate that massive surge of people who are going to be coming through here into the station, and look, the area and the bus station outside as well. This still benefits from all those incredible improvements, like new extended platforms and better step-free access and better links between DLR, overground, buses, tubes, and, people often forget this, an integration with mainline rail that was then known as the Javelin train service. Actually, those trains still have the names of Paralympians and Olympians today going in and out of St Pancras to here. Now, that's great. That does mean I've got possibly too many options to choose now of how to get to my next interview. I can take almost any mode I want. Overground, DLR, tube, bus, Elizabeth line. The boats are a bit far to go from here though. I could just check the TfL Go app, or I could just go and get on a bus. Right, let's go for that. Now, my next guest is someone who I remember shouting loudly at on Saturday, August the 4th, 2012. And I mean that in a good way, because I was cheering him on, just like the rest of the country was, as he went for Olympic gold and then won it. His name is Pete Reed, and he was part of the team in the men's coxless 4, who helped Team GB to retain the gold in that glorious summer. 20 years ago, he was reported as having the largest recorded lung capacity, and then posted the fastest time in the Royal Navy's annual fleet-wide fitness competition. He holds an MBE and an OBE, and now he's an honorary captain in the Royal Navy. His rowing career is incredible, and his personal story and current work is inspirational. Pete, thank you so much for your time. I just want to start out, though, by asking you, what emotions are stirred up when you think back to that summer back in 2012?
I think pride more than anything, and warmth, but I remember just this feeling of general kindness around the city. You'll remember after the build-up to the Olympics, for the 3 and 2 years before it, there were lots of bits in the press saying we can't do this and we haven't got the resources and the UK will get it wrong. And we didn't. We got it so right. I was 31 years old. Probably it was as good as I got in rowing, and with a brilliant team. The guys I was fond of, the coach I respected and admired, And I felt like that was the most free-spirited, strong enabled, and highest performing chapter of my whole rowing career. And I vividly remember using a lot of public transport at that time. I lived in Chiswick, and I remember using the Central Line and the District Line to get me to Stratford. Sitting with members of the public, I was in my Team GB kit at the time because I had to be, because we were going to interviews and doing some things with Adidas, and we'd just won. So I remember children coming over to me and saying hello, and I had a medal in my pocket. I said, look, I'm not a show-off, but you're clearly invested in the Olympics. Do you want to have a look at this? And what the medal represents is, I think it's something for other people. To give over this thing is a wonderful privilege to be able to do. And I haven't been shy in doing that. My medals are beaten and knackered and dented because they've been passed around a lot. And I don't mind that at all. I think it's a lovely thing that people have seen them. It was a beautiful summer, and I really miss it.
Oh, you've articulated that in such a lovely way, such amazing memories. And if we just fast forward, though, to 2019, though, because your life changed that year in ways you couldn't have ever imagined following a spinal stroke. And I read in an interview in which you described what it was like going back into London for the very first time as a wheelchair user. And you said, I think, that you saw the city through different eyes. Could you tell us a bit more about that, please?
A lot changed for me when I had my injury, and it's just one of those days which is bad luck. So I don't need pity from anybody. It's this, by the way, and I don't mean to say this is scaremonger, the disability demographic is one that nobody's immune from joining. It's just normal things and a hard day. Now, that doesn't mean it's going to happen to everybody, of course. But what I'm about to say next, it's worth paying attention to, because whether it affects you or somebody else in your life, or as we all age, we change perspectives on things. So this is really important. I think it's one of the hardest aspects that emotionally that I've had to deal with since being in a wheelchair, and I've been emotionally robust. But the hard aspect is going back to places that I know very, very well from being able-bodied. I think visiting new places is easier because I arrive and I'm seeing it with fresh eyes for the first time. But I know London very well. I knew the transport network well. I knew the 94 bus route very well. I knew my way around the West End and through all the parks. And suddenly, going from seeing these places from a height of 6'6" and being Olympian shaped and sized with physiology that I can only dream of now, I could go anywhere and do anything, and it was easy. And visually, turning up in a wheelchair, now I'm 4'11". I've measured myself, even sitting up tall. It's a different world from down here. I can't see over crowds. I have to look out for every single hazard on the pavement, every bit of dripping water that I have to wheel through rather than step over, every curb. Bus rides are more of a challenge now. It's a scarier place, and that's not a reason not to go, but it's challenging. My energy levels are lower, and it's not designed for me. Even in 2025, when the world is much more accessible than it used to be, it's still a challenge.
Now, Pete, you've spoken about how you want to help to contribute positively to improving the environments of people with accessibility issues. Could you tell me how you did this? This traffic light thing with TfL, how did that all come about?
Well, that campaign's brilliant, and I'm very, very grateful to TfL for leaning in. It was a couple of years ago now. I remember my son was about to be born, so I was distracted with the wonderful family things. And in the meantime, the team at TfL were working closely and working hard to put a series of pedestrian crossing traffic lights out with little wheelchair users as green lights. And the reason I brought it up was my first time in London, I was seeing the little green man walking sign flash up, like the universal sign for walking. And it just made me realise that, and that's fine, by the way. I've got no problem with wheeling when the little green man flashes up. But I just thought it would be a very prominent way, because everybody looks to this figure. It'd be a very prominent way of getting people to just be aware that there are lots of other people that use the city, and it's not always as easy as walking. All good things, all good change starts with a little piece of awareness. And I think because TfL put them in prominent places around the city, it did make people switch on their own light bulbs of, okay, let's have a think about that. I know how lucky I am, but it's still a very inaccessible city. I know what this feels like, where you feel like you can't go out because it's too inhospitable. And instead of contributing and spending and working and thriving and paying taxes, then you go the other way and end up in care wrongly, only because the city is inaccessible. And if you're out and spending money, I want to introduce you to something that I was made aware of a couple of years ago, and it's called the Purple Pound, which is the amount of money that disabled people and their friendship groups have that they can spend in accessible places and cities, and they can't spend in inaccessible places and cities. Right, get ready for your mind to be blown. The conservative estimate of the value of the Purple Pound in the UK alone in 2022 were 249 billion with a B pounds. Even if you don't lean into the importance of access, even if you don't lean into, okay, that it will never happen to me, so let's just ignore this thing, then all hoteliers, restaurateurs, all of the tourist industry can buy into, well, that's a lot of money. And we'd quite like a piece of that. And suddenly the lift that's £2,000 doesn't seem like so much money. Changes still need to be made. And when I see it done well, I shout about it because I think it's brilliant. When it's done badly, I tend not to rant about it because I don't feel like that helps. But privately, between me and you and all of the listeners, unfortunately, there is a lot more cases of the bad stuff than the good stuff still. And I would really like to help change that. At the moment, a good example is the new Elizabeth line, and it's new, so it was designed with wheelchair access in mind. But that proves that it can be done when we're changing, modifying, and building. If we have access in all its forms in the forefront of our minds, then it can be done. And it's also unseen. It's normally a case of just removing barriers. Now, a lot of the Victorian lines from the past, it's very hard and expensive to change those, but as they're adjusted in the future, those can be improved. I've stayed home a few times and not come in because that I know how challenging it's going to be. I never want to be preachy. I never want to receive pity. It's not about that. I think it's just about making a world that's better for everybody. I love the City of London, and the city also, it sets the standard for the rest of the UK. So what happens in London will filter through the other big cities and then into smaller cities, then into towns and through the rest of the UK. And what we do in London then has a positive effect on the rest of Europe and the rest of the world as well. And it's good for everybody, especially the city. And I'll see you in town soon. I'll probably be in a park somewhere enjoying myself. So come and say hi.
I think the word is humbles, because Pete is an example of someone who really humbles me, with his attitude and strength, of course, but his energy for trying to improve the world around him and us and the rest of us as well. If you want to find out more about Pete's incredible work, I do suggest you follow him on social media. So where are we off to now? Well, as you can probably tell, we're off on the Jubilee line, with its familiar sounds of motors whirring off on the way to our next interview. I can't believe we're doing this. I can't believe it. One of the interviews I've always wanted to do, forever, because this is with someone who is inextricably linked with the London Olympic and Paralympic bid and with the games themselves. And she performed on New Year's Eve 1999 at the Millennium Dome itself. And there's a certain song of hers that is actually the same age as TfL and will forever be linked with London 2012. But she is one of my own personal musical heroes. So I'm going to press play awkwardly on the tube on this track now and have a listen to my headphones here on the Underground. I can't believe this, but I'm about to speak to Heather Small.
So many people just make that break for freedom. So what have you done today to make you feel proud?
Thank you for joining us, Heather. Thank you.
Hello, Tim. That's a real right introduction, isn't it?
Let's go back then, 25 years, because you performed, I remember this, at the Millennium Dome in 1999 on New Year's Eve. An incredible performance by you. But what do you remember of that night?
I remember it was like inaugural show. So you nervous. I'm always nervous. And because it's a massive, grand place, you want to give a big performance. And then at the same time, you want to enjoy it. The audience and the performers should enjoy the experience. So yeah, so full of joy.
Let's go back even before 2000, I suppose, because you grew up in West London.
Yeah, I grew up in West London, North Kensington. I always put the North in front of it, and especially at that time, it wasn't gentrified then, and it was tough sometimes. But we loved our area and we loved each other, so we didn't want to be anywhere else. I still live a stone's throw from where I grew up and where I was born, so I love living where I live. I try and enjoy the city as much as I possibly can. I am a walker. I live near some lovely parks. I have a little dog. Walking through London, that's always good fun.
What kind of dog do you have?
A little toy poodle that thinks she's a Doberman Pinscher.
We cannot have this interview without talking about Proud. I'm sure you're sick of talking about Proud over the years, but it's 25 years old this year, isn't it, as well?
It's had so much love over the years because the general theme is about self and others and trying to find a way to move forward with some kind of dignity and integrity. For me to have a song that resonates with others as it does still 25 years later, that does make me happy.
How did it come about becoming the Olympic song?
I think it was suggested by somebody in a room and they thought that they would get somebody to sing it. I don't think they thought I would do it, but I found out about it and said, of course I'll do it. But then they approached me and said, well, we'd love you to sing it. That's a great idea. And we want you to see the video with Proud as a sound bed. And apparently the director said, make the video, but it's got to be Proud. That's got to be the sound bed. And I saw it and I was moved. It somehow made me not think of Proud as my song, but in a positive way. It was, the track that was going to accompany this Olympic bid video. And I thought it works.
It definitely did. I mean, I don't sound cliched, but I mean, you must have been proud when the bid won. I've gone there, I went there. It's inextricably forever linked to you.
Which is lovely because it was such a success. It was what I thought it would be. I really wanted the Olympics in London because I know what it's like to play a home crowd. And I know that you will yourself to do your absolute best. I just wanted that memory for our Olympians. And it's something that will never be forgotten. It was blissful. It was blissful. And so to be linked with the Olympics, for me, that's a positive because I had always championed it. I always thought it would be a good thing. And I went away after the Olympics finished. I was in Mexico and the staff at the hotel, we were talking about the Olympics and one of the staff members said to me, there's only one thing about it that I didn't like. And I was like, oh, what was that? He goes, it should have been longer.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, we'll come on to your tour in a minute. I just want to ask you one little question because I was told, I cannot believe this. I struggle to believe this, but I was told you had a special birthday this year in January, which I was shocked by.
I am 60. I have turned 60 in January. So,
Congratulations.
Yeah, so I applied for my TfL for my pass.
Do you go on the bus still, on the tube? Do you ever use the tube still?
I use the tube. Yeah, my mother and my sister, they're a lover of the buses, but I prefer the tube because I'm impatient. I like to get somewhere quickly. So next time I use it, I'll have a pass.
That's amazing. I can't be a heather small on a tube.
And so, there's any markers that mean that I'm 60 and over, I take it. The free prescriptions, the free eye tests, the pass. Yeah, it's all a celebration of that 60th year. And I'll take it.
Well, I mean, 60th year, and you're heading out on tour.
And I love the live. And I started earlier in the year in January with Wet, Wet, Wet. And we're going to do the second part of the tour in October. I have to tell you, it was an absolute blast. I enjoyed every second of it. Times are hard. Times are difficult. So if anybody spent money, I want them to feel like they've got value for money. And I suppose that's with any performance that I do over the years. You want people to think, you know what? Because they can spend their money on anything. And I want people to leave and think, you know what? I'm glad I treated myself to this live show, that I spent the money on me and Heather didn't let us down. Yeah, you just have to go and find me on Instagram. That will lead you to a ticket sales.
And what can people expect on your tour? Greatest hits? New, some of the newer stuff?
Well, it's I do the hits. I have to say, when you go out there, that's what people want to hear. I give the people what they want, Tim.
Heather Small, thank you so very much. Thank you so much to Heather for making a lifelong dream come true for me in doing that interview. Absolutely brilliant stuff, and so great to hear she is a keen user of TfL services too. Of course she is. Because we're talking about major events in this episode, I'd like to pause here to address what is, of course, one of the most significant and darkest days in London's and in TfL's history of the last 25 years. It is 7/7, the terror attacks on London commuters that took place in July of 2005. Bombs were detonated on 3 tube trains and a bus during rush hour, leaving 52 people dead and injuring hundreds more. What happened affected so many people in so many ways, including, of course, a huge number of TfL staff and frontline workers, and the stories of tragedy and also of bravery on that day will stay with us forever. Now, I'm going to talk about some of the learnings and experiences from that day from a TfL point of view with my next guest. However, first of all, we're going to speak about some of the other work she's been involved in, including planning for major events in London's recent history, which have put the city centre stage. This interview is with someone who, to be honest, is a genuine legend of Transport for London. She was the first female train operator on the Victoria line in 1992, and since then she's done almost every job in the book, from training people to drive and maintain trains to the Emergency Response Unit, which is sort of like the emergency services for the tube, plus the Network Control Centre. Her name is Joan Saunders-Reece, and I'm really excited to have her on the show. Now she's Operational Emergency Planning Manager. Joan, it's tricky to talk, I think, about your career. Sounds like a series of cliches, I think, but terms like trailblazer, inspiration, innovator. Oh, don't look so embarrassed.
It's making me blush.
Industry leader. They all apply to you, and an awful lot more. Let's talk about some of the big events that happened, perhaps over those 25 years of TfL. How TfL responds to and plans for events. And we've got big one-off events like business as usual stuff like Notting Hill Carnival every year, and Pride and New Year's Eve fireworks and so on. I mean, I can't imagine a day of the year you're not looking forward to the next big event in the calendar.
Well,
but what needs to be done to prepare for this stuff?
Well, you know, some of the events, and our largest event for the year is Notting Hill Carnival.
Is it?
And we're looking at 15 months planning time for that. So before we've even finished planning for one, we're starting looking at, for the following year, we're looking at what went wrong, what could we improve, the debrief, and all these sort of things. New Year's Eve, we sort of engage with people maybe a year, even 2 years. I mean, with the Olympics, well, that was initially something like 6 years before there was initial conversations in terms of, if London gets the Olympics, how are we going to do it? Can we show that we run a reliable, safe railway? So it was all these things which there's very much, it can be a long lead-up time to them. So many people, so many organisers want events in London, and we have to sort of start saying to people, well, no, you might not want that weekend. No, you want to move it along. And even something as simple as engineering work. I mean, quite recently we had a situation where they wanted to do escalator work, and it was quite close to the bank holiday weekend they wanted. So we, you know, and engineering work is booked probably 64 days prior to it taking. But so it was sort of gently nudging them along and saying, you might want to do it that way. So not only is it the event, but it's all the other things that could affect we are planning for.
Moving on to some other big events with massive international attention though. Royal events in London require a lot of complex planning with other stakeholders and different groups and so on. But I'd like to focus actually on the funeral of Queen Elizabeth II and the coronation of Charles III and Queen Camilla. And of course those are quite fresh in our memories. But what are the special issues or challenges perhaps around royal events maybe, and how complex were those two?
That's a really interesting question, because we had plans in place, but I mean, in terms of the Queen dying, I was actually on holiday then, and my mother-in-law at the time lived in Mallorca. I got a message saying, probable royal death, and the next thing I know is I got a phone call, can you come back to London? I'd just arrived in Mallorca 3 days. My mother-in-law was absolutely furious, how can you just arrived here? Another thing, I had my laptop with me, so I could actually work from Mallorca and then do the planning, the plans, we needed to do change plans and all these things. And, thank God for Teams and what have you, so we could actually do the calls. And then I flew back to London and got involved in the more on the ground stuff. When it happens, you've just got to sort of react as quickly and safely as possible. And people come from all corners of the United Kingdom to a royal funeral, a royal wedding, what have you. And, you're getting people who are not familiar with the underground. So things change. We put out a call for some of our ambassadors, and now some of our ambassadors are people who work in the office, but actually licensed to go and assist on a station in terms of helping and assisting customers. And we put out a call for ambassadors, if you've got a second, third, fourth language,
So you have back office people in
Yeah.
TfL,
Yeah.
like yourself and those around here in Palestra, who actually can go out onto the system to assist and
Yeah.
support to make life an emergency, not emergencies, but big events and planning better.
Yeah.
I didn't realise that.
Yes,
That's great.
yes.
Dual-skilled people.
And they wear I think they still wear the magenta. They wear the magenta high vis, yeah.
Well, let's take a change to in tone now, but can we go back perhaps to 2005 and that I think the word is probably horrendous tragedy of the 7/7 bombings, in which 52 people lost their lives and 800 nearly were injured in those terror attacks. The specifically targeted commuters on transport services in London, and nothing can prepare any organisation or city for something like that, I guess. But there are so many sad and incredible stories from that day, but stories of bravery and selflessness, dedication, preparation from yourselves on that day. And I'm not going to ask you to sum up that day and that topic, but I want to focus perhaps instead on the learnings that TfL had from it, and how systems and procedures and policies changed as a result of the 7th, and the experiences that you and your colleagues had on the 7th of July that year, please.
That was another day when I was actually at home, and that's all I remember is calls coming in, are you all right, John? And I'm going, yes, I'm fine. And then, I turned on the news and I immediately went down to my local station at the time and actually offered assistance. And we had trains stuck in all over the place. So, it was offering assistance and assurance to those who were there.
What job were you doing at the time?
And I was still I was in emergency planning then. I was an emergency planning manager. So now it's letting the plans work. It was really weird, because just about 3 or 4 months before, I actually done a tabletop exercise, and it was a multi-site bombing. So we'd already done planning for this, not with the expectation that this was going to happen. So when this all took place, it was all about getting, the right people in the right location. And sometimes it's not about people turning up at the control centre. It's saying to certain people, especially senior managers, go home, go to this hotel, get your head down, because we will need you in 4 to 6 hours' time to come in and relieve people. And you can't fault staff who work on the railway or on Transport for London. They will go and assist them. People were coming out from everywhere to go and assist, go down tunnels, help get people out, that sort of thing. And we looked at our procedures, because then we had to change our procedures in terms of bombing, because before it had been previously in relation to the troubles of Northern Ireland, and that's the sort of model it was. So it was now we're moving into something else. What do we need to ensure that staff now how to sort of deal with something like that? So procedures like that were changed, and also we had the station safety checks for people to sort of just go through stations to make sure that there isn't anything sort of suspicious left. So there was a lot of learning, and I think even in terms of how we evacuate trains, looking on tightening that up, and also the information, because First indication was that it was a power issue, and that was what the indication in the control rooms. So you have to react to that. Then it became clearer that more and more things was happening, and listening to the tapes of the conversations with the controllers, you know, when all this was happening, calm, cool and collected they were. And even then it still brings chills to me, you know, the hair stand up on the back of my neck, hearing the conversations. Yes, I think it could be something like that. You know, in terms of communication, how we communicate, those are some of the lessons, you know, we've actually had to, and how we look after people. So at the time, we were just in our infancy with the Family Assistance Centre. That came online. I was very much involved in that, and that was looking after those families of those who had been injured or who had lost friends, families and relatives, and ensuring that they were looked after, put up in hotels, transport, and it didn't have to be an Oyster card, but a taxi to get them to visit people in hospital. And so there was a load of things which we actually took on and learned from that. And we're still learning. Every day we're still learning and thinking, can we improve on this? And we look at incidents which have taken place worldwide to see if we need to change our plans or tighten up on any procedures. And it's an ongoing process.
It's been a privilege, as ever, speaking to you. One last question from me. As TfL celebrates its big 25th anniversary this year, what does Transport for London mean to you? It's been a huge part of your life.
Oh,
I mean,
crikey.
it's been your life. What emotions do you feel when you discuss this anniversary and all that's been achieved?
You know what? It's like there's just so many things, and I like to call us the TfL family. And it's knowing that the TfL family, in whatever area you're doing, from the person who's sweeping the platforms to, you know, the directors, what have you, we're all working, you know, for one common aim, and that is ultimately to keep London moving and keep London moving safely. And that is the key thing for me, and which makes me get up and makes me, you know, fills me with joy when I'm out and about in London. I think the emergency response bit is still in me, because if something goes wrong, I immediately go up and, you know, say to the driver, do you need any assistance or what have you? Naturally, I get involved. I will always get involved and assist where necessary, and hence that's why I always will have a high-vis jacket in my bag. I know it sounds strange, and a J-door key, so if, you know, assistance is needed to reset anything, then, you know, I can do it. But I don't think that will ever go away. I think they might start asking questions when I'm retired and I start doing things, but, you know, we'll deal with that when we come to it. Yeah. And I know this might sound really sort of I don't know, cliched, a bit soppy or what have you, but, you know, London, my heart just sings for London, anything about London, you know. And yes, we've got the good and we've got the bad bits of London, but there's nothing like going through, you know, sort of driving through London in the early hours of the morning. And I used to do that, and seeing London in all its magnificence, it's quiet, it's, you know, before the madness starts, and, you know, and knowing that, you know, and for me, knowing that I'm part of, you know, one of the many thousands of people who keep London moving, you know, and under whatever circumstances, you know, it's all about keeping London moving, and that's what I'm passionate about.
Before we leave, I wanted to say a big thank you to Joan for that really lovely interview. It's amazing to hear about all of her work, and I genuinely wish we had more time to share even more of her wonderful stories. Major events in London require support and planning from so many agencies, and massive coordination from organisers and the Met Police and the London Fire Brigade, and so many more. Every one of them is essential, but especially when it comes to massive things like the Olympics, or perhaps even unexpected events such as 7/7, of course. And TfL has a special place in that hugely complicated and really important system. And quite rightly, the people who work here, right across all the networks, all the modes, are so proud of how they've been really quite a big part, an intrinsic part of these moments, even if you or I might not first always realise it. Now, I want to leave the final word in this episode to two very special guests who recorded a very special message that was played out on the tube during the coronation weekend in 2023, one of the big events Joan mentioned in her interview. This is the real audio that was used and was recorded especially in-house for TfL. So it's goodbye from me. And now it's time to hand you over now to King Charles III and Queen Camilla.
My wife and I wish you and your families a wonderful coronation weekend.
Wherever you are travelling, we hope you have a safe and pleasant journey.
And remember, please mind the gap.